Nearly 2 million Americans will be diagnosed with cancer this year. Every single one of them will be told what to do with their body. Almost none of them will be told what to do with their mind. And according to the science, that's missing piece, maybe the most important part of the entire treatment. Today, we are talking about what your doctor cannot prescribe and why it matters more than most people realize. My guest today has spent over 25 years working with cancer patients, not on the medical side, but on the mental side, the side that oncologists never address. Avi Lerner is a cancer and trauma recovery specialist, a holistic health practitioner, and a TEDx speaker, and the author of 2 books on the mental science of cancer recovery, including his brand new book, Mindful Remission, The Mental Science of Healing, published in this May. His work is grounded in psychoneuroimmunology, at the peer-reviewed science that maps the direct pathways between what happens in your mind and what happens in your immune system. Avi, welcome to the show. I am honored to have you today.
And thank you. It's good to be with you, Stacey, and well done on this psychoneuroimmunology word. That's a big word, but maybe we can simplify it as we go along.
All right. That sounds great. Now, let's start with something that I think is going to be, it's going to really land hard for a lot of people listening. You said that treating cancer as only a physical event leaves patients without half of their tools. What is the other half, and why does conventional medicine leave it out?
Well, the simple reality is that we're made of more than just a collection of physical organs, right? We're more than just a physical body. And of course, in the hierarchy of care, we have to address the physical body first because that's where the crisis is most visible.
Yes.
But we have other dimensions to us as well. Cancer, yes, it impacts our mm, physical realm, of course, but it impacts us mentally, emotionally, some of us even spiritually. And so my point is that when we just address one part of the healing equation, we're going to get partial results, hence recurrences and challenges. The goal is to really help people understand that they do have agency, that their mind, and when you often say the mind, people think about therapy and so forth, but I'll explain why this is not pertaining to talk therapy. The mind is a very big part of who we are. We are 50% physical and 50% non-physical. So if we can address the non-physical part of who we are, we can, in theory, improve our odds of healing and recovery by 50%. And of course, it makes perfect sense because we want to be able to do more for ourselves. The reality is that medicine treats the physical body, just not the person living in this physical body. And that's where someone like myself comes into the picture.
I love that. Now, you work in a field called psychoneuroimmunology. In plain language, what does that research actually show us about the connection between our mental state and our immune function?
Yeah. So I would say that my work is grounded in this field of science and research called psychoneuroimmunology. So essentially, it's the study of the interaction or communication between the mind, which is the non-physical part of who we are, then the brain, which is the 3-pound gray organ in our skull, and nervous and immune system. So there's communication going on all day long. In other words, every thought impacts our experience on every level, and it impacts our biology as well, essentially. So we've never really been taught to pay close attention to what we're thinking about, and we know that most of our thoughts are unconscious in that respect. And so when do we become aware of them, or what can prompt us to pay more attention? And usually it's when something isn't working the way that it used to, when something malfunctions in our body, we have pains, aches, or other symptoms, or even limiting behaviors like addiction and risky behaviors. Then we have to pay attention to what's actually going on in a person's mind. When we talk about the mind, I think it's a good place to mention that we have these two parts, for the most part, conscious and subconscious. And the reason I mention that therapy is not necessarily the right venue for that or medium for resolving what's happening beneath the surface is because talk therapy primarily engages the conscious mind, which is logical and rational, the part of your mind that is listening to me right now, analyzing, critiquing. And that part of the mind is important, but it's not the emotional mind.
Yes.
It's not where information is held. So it's very limited. And a lot of people that have been to therapy, they know that they can go, week by week, month, sometimes years go by and they're still kind of trying to figure it out. My approach is slightly different. We're using hypnotherapy, a particular protocol of it, to access the subconscious mind, which is the part of our mind that is emotional, governs most of our bodily functions, including our immune system. And so this kind of work essentially utilizes a mechanism that we know through research and science exists and is at work all the time. And we're essentially hacking into it to bring about a more desirable outcome in simple terms.
I love that. Now, what happens inside the body when someone is living in chronic fear, stress, or hopelessness during treatment?
So the quick answer for it is dysregulated nervous system. We can't really go through anything in life without it having an impact on how we feel or what we think, what we focus on, what we ponder. And any cancer patient or anyone that dealing with any health crisis will tell you that there's that special time in the middle of the night when they're staring at the ceiling, they can't fall asleep because their mind is running through every worst case scenario. The point of it is that this tension or fear or anxiety, whatever you want to call it, it's not just emotional, it's physiological. And that's why it's dangerous because this particular field of research, psychoneuroimmunology, have demonstrated beyond any proof. And by the way, we've known this for more than 50 years now. It came about in the 1970s. So we know that certain mental and emotional patterns suppress the functioning of our immune system, and it then unable to work on an optimal level, and we end up more vulnerable to all kind of disease agents, carcinogens, and everything in between. And it's something that we can do a lot about. We've just never really been taught how to do it, but I guess that's why we're talking. So
Yeah, I feel like it's so important because people don't realize when you go through stress, 100% of stress causes illness. And that's why people come down with all different types of illnesses and diseases is because it just like breaks, the stress in our lives just break the walls of our immune system. It basically is like opening the door and saying, come and get me. Because, and in simple terms, stress is a number one killer in my eyes because it just breaks everything down and opens up things, for all these diseases and illnesses and conditions to make its way in because it's like it breaks the whole body down mentally and physically.
yeah. And essentially, there's two main reasons why we stress out. One has to do with perception. We perceive a situation to be dangerous, difficult, or painful, and that applies to a variety of things we go through in life. But the
Right.
second part is really where the power is. It's all about belief. We tend not to believe that we have the inner resources to cope.
Right.
If you change that component alone, then whatever comes our way, we can engage with, we can meet with more agency. So, in a way, I like to say that I help cancer patients essentially while they're going through treatment. I help them strengthen their immune system, yes, or immune function, but I help them become more resilient so that they go through treatment with a lot more agency and a lot less fear.
Yeah.
Even if we just do that, we can achieve a great deal. So both perception and belief are aspects of the mind. They're not physical aspects. And
Right.
so when we go to address those two different components, we have to work with the mind and more specifically with that part of the mind that is relevant, which is again, the subconscious mind.
Right. Now, this is the part I want to go deep on because I think it will generally shock people. You say that helplessness and hopelessness are just emotions, that they are not measurable clinical variables that affect treatment outcomes. What does that actually mean?
I would say that they actually do affect treatment outcome because when you think about what happens to us when we go to visit the doctor, there's a person, we're laying on a table and we're waiting for someone in a white coat to tell us, okay, what's wrong with us?
Yes.
If it's a cancer patient, what's the outcome of this scan or this test or procedure? And will I get to keep on living? We give so much power to this other person. And, logically, that makes perfect sense because they have knowledge that we don't, and they have the tools that we don't. And for the most part, oncologists and medical providers are incredible people doing really incredible work.
Yeah.
But medicine is not the whole story. So when we step into quite naturally into helplessness, hopelessness, victimhood, these are some of the patterns that this research psychoneuroimmunology suggests that impair immune function. So we know that we are essentially, well, unintentionally working against ourselves. We're making it much harder for treatment to work as prescribed. Does
Right.
that explain?
Oh, it does. It does. Now, what does the research show happens to someone's body when they feel like they have no control of what is happening to them?
So again, it's in a way not just a mental state. If we give up hope and excuse me, if we give up hope and if we give up our agency, our biology responds accordingly. So I want you to think about this. We can't really take a step to the left or a step to the right without the mind telling the body to do so.
Right.
We understand that. So when we unintentionally find ourselves feeling helpless and hopeless and without agency, we are communicating to our biology that we're not as resilient, we're not as strong, that we are in a shutdown mode, and the body will have to express that in
Yes.
much the same way that if you want to turn left, the body will turn left. If you tell the body, I have zero something to do with this illness, I'm not a part of it, then the body will say, okay, we'll let I like to say that we let gravity take hold of the body as such. But something quite incredible happens when we understand that, internalize that, and put it into action. In other words, we begin to recognize that we do have agency. There's a lot that we can do. We might not win every single time, but
Right.
at least we can step into our innate power. And I want people to understand this is not about crossing fingers and hoping for better outcome. There is a mechanism that is working within the body. We're not relying on good wishes or some spiritual forces here. No, there's a healing mechanism at work. It's innate to each and every one of us. It's been healing our scrapes and wounds and mended our broken bones if we ever had one, and helped us heal from infections and bacteria and COVID and everything in between. That mechanism is working 24/7. And we have a choice to either strengthen that mechanism, engage with it, or disengage from it. And when we give something our attention, more energy flow in that direction. And
Yes.
we can learn how to do that. Even if we are in an advanced stage, we can help or we can learn how to help this mechanism do what it's designed to do, which is to eliminate any abnormalities in the blood.
Right. Now, for the listeners out there, if you or someone you love has faced a cancer diagnosis or any serious health crisis and felt like the emotional side of it was being completely ignored by the medical system, this conversation is for you. Follow this podcast right now. Every single week, we bring you conversations that give real answers and real tools for your health and your life. Now, let's make this practical for someone listening right now who is in treatment or supporting someone who is. What are the specific mental practices that help move someone from fear and overwhelm into a state where their body can actually work with treatment?
Sure. So it depends if you want to work with someone or not. If you want to work with someone like me, my work is all about reprogramming and rewiring, right? So reprogramming the mind for a better outcome, upgrading our operating system so that we can expect better results, and essentially rewiring or re-educating our nervous system to shift in a different direction. If someone wants to work on their own, and it's certainly doable to some extent, I would recommend the first thing that I would suggest is to address their identity. Right? When we hear those three powerful words, you have cancer, until that moment in time, you were somebody's mother, father, brother, sister. You had hopes and you had dreams. You looked into the future without flinching. And those three words have collapsed most of it into this idea that I'm now dealing with cancer. In other words, I'm a cancer patient. And there's a shift in identity that happens at the most fundamental level of who we are. And again, we tend to fall into the why me question and the victimhood. And there's a process at play here that disempower and drains our resources, inner resources. So the first thing we need to do is address our identity and make sure that the person that we are is the person that we want to be. How do you want to meet this moment in time? How do you want to show up? And I'm not talking about pretending that everything is great, because treatment is challenging. I'm talking about creating a contract with yourself, essentially, that I'm going to meet with certain capacities, and
Yeah,
my goal is to find ways to empower myself. And sometimes it's doable on our own, but I highly recommend that you work with someone, because our loved ones are just not equipped to help us do that.
I agree with you. I've worked with a lot of different, communities and done a lot of advocate work. And one thing I see a lot of times is denial. And sometimes the denial could last a short period of time, and sometimes it could last a long period of time. I've even seen people not go for treatment right away once they're diagnosed. They think, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this and, I'll be fine, and, I'll try this and I'll be fine." Do you find that denial is one of the symptoms that you see when someone is diagnosed with cancer?
I see it very often, which is why I do free consultations because I want to listen to someone. I want to look in their eyes. I want to gauge for all these different things from their will to live, their resolve to heal, whether they are in denial or not. And the reality is that uh, thankfully, we are living in a day and age where medicine save lives, and it's important to say that. It's not perfect. It's not the whole story, right? Some doctors like you to believe that it's a written done story, but every discovery, every new breakthrough, medical breakthrough, literally rewrite the whole story. But what we know about nowadays about the body, the biology, epigenetics, all of these different pieces of science, psychoneuroimmunology, I mean, it works to our advantage. It can buy us precious time, and then we can still go on and do the inner work that we need to do.
When you talk about identity, that's huge because now you are not that person like you mentioned. You had hopes and dreams to accomplish this and to do this, and all of a sudden now you're diagnosed with cancer, and that identity that you've created for yourself no longer is relevant. Now you are in a whole different world, and what the scariest part is that you don't know what is ahead. And for people, that's one of the scariest things is not knowing. And that's when all those thoughts start to in your head. Well, this could happen and that could happen. And what about this? And what about that? What are some, tips that you can maybe suggest for people and maybe mention some of the stages, what people normally go through, and some little tips on how people could start to prepare themselves so they can start to go through that coping stage in a much healthier way.
The first thing is to recognize that that they're not their illness, right? There's a separation there. The body is going through what the body is going through, but just like we never really identified with a flu or, a broken leg, we don't have to identify with that. But I do want to say that it's unfortunately, as the system is right now, it's extremely challenging to do just on our own, mainly because any waiting room in a hospital that you will go to, you will see people waiting, just waiting and waiting. And there's a sense of helplessness. And when will they get to me? And then I only have a few short minutes. And so the system unintentionally reinforces that helplessness. I would say the first thing you want to do is separate your identity from the illness itself. You want to cultivate what I call grounded hope, because the kind of hope that most cancer patients have is what I call white knuckle hope. It's very fragile. Every scan results can shatter the whole thing. So what we can do, because we can't control a lot of other things, but we can absolutely control how we govern ourselves, what kind of hope we fuel and kind of develop or cultivate, if you will, what kind of mindset we cultivate. And so identity, grounded hope, mindset, absolutely three crucial things to how you're going to arrive at the other end of it. Because if you've been dragged through treatment, even if successful, and I can't tell you how often I have people that have completed treatment and medically speaking, they are a success story, but they sit in my office and they're in tears because yes, they've completed treatment, they're cancer free, but they're not really free. Every twinge in their body feels like a recurrence. Every scan feels like a Russian roulette. And this waiting in between is just so overwhelming. It's so taxing on our nervous system that
Yeah.
we just don't know what to do. We're in paralysis. We're in constant, there's a chronic level of stress, this low hum of dread beneath everything that we experience. We can't even be with our loved ones, just, be present. We have to constantly fidget with something, and it's hard and exhausting. And more to our point, it's counterproductive to what our body is trying to do. So
Right.
instead of supporting our healing, we're working against it.
Yes. Now, is there something anyone can learn, or does it require working with a specialist?
I would highly recommend some of the tools that I teach to my client, they're all available out there. Emotional freedom technique is a very good one. This is just tapping because it's very effective and very practical, very easy to learn, very available all the time. That's one. I would say that there are some meditation. So people ask me often about meditations, but the challenge with meditations is that, and I'm going to get canceled for that, but I like to say that meditations suck. Why? Because it's just not how our mind works. Our mind, the conscious mind, needs something to chew on all the time.
Yeah.
When we're asking it to do nothing, it's incredibly challenging for us, and it backfires because at least my clients tell themselves, I'm so broken that I can't even do nothing. So I would highly recommend, instead of meditation, using self-hypnosis recordings because it's constructed a little different so that the mind has something to work with,
Right.
and that change is significant. So we just need to learn what to do, and then we'll be able to do it. And everyone have access to self hypnosis recordings and emotional freedom technique. I know that it's available. The course is available on my website, and people can have access to resources. They just need to be a bit proactive about it because, unfortunately, it's not the oncologist scope of practice or your medical care team scope of practice. It's not part of their training. So, yes, ideally it would be, but the reality is that we're not there yet.
Right. Now, you mentioned tapping. I know what tapping is, but a lot of people don't know what tapping is. Can you describe and go a little bit into detail about what tapping is?
Sure. So I like to think of tapping as emotional acupressure, if you will. It's essentially grounded in Chinese medicine theory, right? And everybody heard about acupuncture. So we're using very similar points or some points from the realm of acupuncture, but instead of needles, we are using our fingers and we tap on those particular meridian points while verbalizing and emoting in a certain way that just allow us to, in a way, the simple gist of it is just we're transforming emotional chaos or energy into a physical expression. In other words, we give it a name, we express it, and we exhaust it from the body. So in a way, it's just a very practical way to take something that we're not entirely sure what it is because it's emotional, it's non-physical, it's not tangible so much, and we are converting it into something that is very tangible. And there are not too many self-help tools that work, I would say almost 100% of the time. And emotional freedom technique or tapping is really that. Now, it works so well to the point that even though it came not from the psychotherapeutic school or the medical school, it came about differently, and we can talk about that. But even though it's not consistent with what a psychotherapist will learn at school, many psychotherapists and therapists have kind of annexed it because they realize that what they're doing is not, it's very limited. So
Right.
teaching someone how to do this for themselves is a very wise step forward because you'll have this tool for life. You can apply it anytime on everything, and you will always get the benefit of feeling not just a little bit better, but a lot better. And if you can drill down, do it properly, you will resolve really what we call core beliefs, core issues that have been governing your experience for years, if not decades.
Right. I love that. Now, you also have a course that you mentioned that's on your website. Can you tell us about your course and what it's about?
Sure. So my course is Mindful Remission. Mindful remission essentially relates to the fact that medicine treats the physical body, not the person living it. So mindful remission is where that person gets support. And essentially, it's a big toolbox where people can learn the skills that no one really taught us about how to live life well, how to maintain a proper mindset, outlook, attitude, and general physical health. Again, I said that to you just before. We were taught how to survive, not how to live well. And that's because our parents were busy and the environment was not always conducive to thriving. And so we learned certain things. We need to learn new things if we want new results. And
Exactly.
so this kind of course is an 8-week course where everyone can really learn the fundamental tools that my in-person clients learn and get tremendous results in transformation. But they do it online. And I have people from Australia, England, South America, as well as the US, learning these skills and getting outcomes that are better. It's not just information, it's a coaching program. So I get to meet with people every week for about an hour or so, where we do the deeper work using the hypnotherapy component because information doesn't lead to transformation. It's application, accountability, structure, and guidance that can help us get that kind of result. So you mentioned my book in the opening of the podcast today, and this new book that I've written, it's called Mindful Remission: The Mental Science of Healing Cancer, and it's essentially a collection of all these different tools that I offer people through the Mindful Remission online program, but now they have it in a format of a workbook. It's a big book. I call it a brave book because you have so many books written on the topic of cancer and healing, but they all tell you what to do, not how to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever noticed that. So one of my clients said, "Why don't you put this on paper?" Right? Because I know that so many. Anyway, so I did. And this book actually demanded to be written. So I'm not a writer. I don't enjoy it, even though I've written the previous one. It's called The New Cancer Paradigm, published back in 2012. But this one, which will come out either at the end of this month or starting next month, it is essentially it's giving anyone the tools they need to be able to thrive, not just during medical treatment, but long after throughout their lives.
I love that. I love that. Now, where can people find your book when it comes out?
So it will be on Amazon and such outlets, but right now people can pre-order it, and there's actually quite a good incentive to do so. Right now it's about $19.99 for the book, and this is a big book. It's for 400 pages plus, and essentially right now, if you go on my website into the shop tab and click on that book, you will see a link for the pre-order, and you will have access to bonuses, different courses that I offered over the years. So it's essentially the value is $80 plus, but you can get it today for $20, and you will essentially get all these different components in it and really take advantage of all this information that's been collected. I've been doing this now for 25 years, and the privilege of doing that for so long is that you get to really curate and sift through tremendous amount of information that is out there and really distill it to a protocol that works. Because
Yeah.
no one, if we talk about EFT or tapping, no one has 7.5 years to study Chinese medicine right now. So can I use the technology in simple form
Hmm.
to my benefit?
Yeah.
And the answer is, of course, yes, absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Last, big idea before we land this, and I love this one. You say hope is not wishful thinking. You say that it's a clinical variable. So what does that mean scientifically?
So it relates right back to the idea that there is a healing mechanism at work. We don't have to kind of ponder if we did the sun salutation this morning or we ate that particular vegetable.
Right.
These are all important, but there's a healing mechanism at work. We understand through science how it works. So we don't have to rely on wishful thinking. We can anticipate the simple philosophy that I have that if you consistently take the right kind of results, you are more likely to consistently get the right kind of action.
Yes.
These kind of tools that we use through the Mindful Remission program are designed to promote grounded hope, which will give you the certainty. You don't have to wake up feeling anxious in the morning, hoping that things will turn out well. No, you can wake up with certainty because you know that whatever comes your way, you can meet it with confidence, with assurance, with the right tools, with the right approach, and you will meet whatever challenges, because there are challenges, you'll meet them in the right state of mind. And by the way, we know through research, and this is research done by insurance companies, so they don't like to do these things, but the research was pertaining in particular recovery from surgery, that when you go into surgery in the right state of mind, there's a faster recovery rate, sometimes by 9 days. And that's why they loved it, because if they can kick you out of the hospital 9 days earlier, you save the money, and that's the bottom line. And I'm grateful for that research because it just proved the point that we are making all these years, that
Yes.
you can learn how to enter any procedure in the right state of mind. You can rely on the science, on the research. This is not a new age philosophy or a law of attraction, or, it's not any of those. It's just practical application of science and research.
I love that. And what would you say to someone who is struggling and feels hopeful right now and feels guilty or weak because of it?
I would say that their mind is doing what it's designed to do, which is to create a contrast for them. So they'll be prompt to take action. Think about, I don't know, when was the last time you thought about your shoulders or your spleen? Or we don't really think about ourselves unless there's some tension and pain and discomfort.
Right.
If someone is feeling weak, broken, effective, that they're beyond repair. It's a false premise. It's the mind trying to prompt them to take action in any way they can or that they should. And it's incredibly important that they listen to their mind and find someone to partner with. I'm not talking about support groups. Support groups are not the ideal environment for that. The intention is great, but the application not so much. And I'm talking about cancer coaches. And for the most part, when people talk about cancer coaches nowadays, they talk about lifestyle. I'm talking about more um, of what I do, which is essentially you want to address the mind, you want to address the other part of you so that you can take any advantage possible of what's available. So a year from now, you don't have to wonder if you've done everything you could. You will absolutely know
Yes.
that you have, and you will have peace of mind.
I love that. Now, you have spent 25 years sitting with people at the most frightening moment of their lives. What would you want every cancer patient and everyone who loves, one to understand about the power that they actually have in this process?
In simple words, I would ask them to at least entertain the fact that cancer is no longer a death sentence, that they are not helpless, and that they're not this particular disease. It's very tempting for us to identify with all of this, to have this outlook and attitude, but it's just wrong. We feel this way because of certain things that we learn through life about ourselves, the world, and how we function in this big world. And helplessness and hopelessness are just, what sometimes we all feel. But it's a phase, it's a moment in time, and they have a choice. Do they let gravity pull them down
Yeah,
into the marrow of it, or do they rise to meet the occasion? And it's not necessarily easy to do, but it's simple.
right. So true. So true. Now, where can people find you? And can you tell us a little about the services that you provide?
Sure. So if people Google my name, Avinoam Lerner, they will reach my website. That's avinoamlerner.com. There's a whole bunch of services that I offer, from cancer services such as the online program, the Mindful Remission. I offer an in-person intensive um, program, and that is intensive. It's 3 days, it's 15 hours, divided in a certain way that allow us to really go very deep into the rabbit hole we call the subconscious mind, and really address the deep seated patterns that are fueling our helplessness and hopelessness and distress. Anyone wants better outcomes, better experience, better quality of life. Any one of these services will serve them right. I work with people living with significant trauma because there is an intersection through the science of psychoneuroimmunology, intersection between trauma or certain traumatic events to illness. And it's important for me to say that it's not that trauma causes cancer. That's not the point. The point is that trauma dysregulate our nervous system, which then impact our immune system. So it's a bit more complex. But there is a way for us to make sure that trauma doesn't take hold of the body
Yes.
in as illness or limitation or addiction or other destructive behaviors. So anyone on that spectrum, and trauma is subjective, and anyone dealing with medical conditions that have not been resolved through medicine alone, and they are curious, what else is there? They want to take action. These services can help them. I'm a hypnotherapist or a clinical hypnotherapist, so I work a lot with different conditions, anything from infertility to allergies to gut issues and everything else. So there's a lot that can be done, mainly for those people who understand that there's more to them than just this physical body. They want to step into agency, they just don't know how.
Right. I love that. And for the listeners out there, your doctor can prescribe chemotherapy, surgery, radiation. What they cannot prescribe is the mental work that makes all of it more effective. Avi has spent over 25 years proving that the mind is not a bystander in healing. It is an active participant. And learning how to use it changes everything. Avi, I'm so grateful that you came on the show today and that you shared all this with us. I feel that trauma plays a huge role in our health. As we had talked about early on, we talked about how a lot of the trauma is stored in our subconscious. And unless we take the time to really go into our subconscious, bring those traumatic events to the surface, and then learn how to heal ourselves and overcome these traumas, it's going to stay within us, and it can, break down our immune system and cause a lot of different illnesses mentally and physically. And that people like yourself, can help people overcome and move on with their lives so they can have a happy, healthy, and productive life. And I really thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for doing the work that you do and spending so many years dedicating your life to helping others, because trauma is something that everybody deals with, and everybody has different levels that they consider trauma. We all go through different things and we all have a story to tell, but some people can deal with it better than others. Some people, they can't. And, and this trauma is stored in our lives and it affects us one way or another. And unfortunately, some people get it that those traumatic events really, really hurt them, mentally and physically, to the point where they get stuck in life. They can't function. They can't, move to their full potential in life. So I'm so glad that you came on the show to share your expertise, to share your knowledge with
Thank
us,
you.
to help people by creating these courses, by creating all these different services to help people move on with their lives and to live the life that they've always wanted and they've always dreamt of having. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. I hope you'll be on the show in the future and we can talk more in depth about a lot of different topics that we touched base on
Wonderful.
today.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Stacy.
You're very welcome. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Bye bye.